Shiloh, how's it going?
Rob, it's going great, man. Great to see you again.
Good to see you. And it's week 3, episode 3. We'll try and do it in one take this time. All right, let's go quick headlines around the league. They went from no news yesterday, August 23rd, to August 24th, having a few more headlines. So first headline we see is Canucks and Elias Pettersson primed to profit from projected 2024 NHL salary cap boost. So he's making 7.3 this contract, comes off the deal in September 24. This is courtesy of the province for this headline. He'll need a new contract. So my question to you is, what do you think he will make?
If he plays like he currently has been, let's say for the last half of last season, he's most likely going to be in and around the Miller mark. So whatever, if we keep him and sign him, because it's going to be interesting to see who actually gets the higher pay grade. Because technically Miller, like almost at 100 points last season, right? Number 5 in points in the league. So, he's going to be up there. And Pettersson, as much as I love him, is not proven to that level yet. So are you going to bump him above Miller, even though he's not there? So it's going to be interesting. I think he's just going to be below Miller. I think it's going to be probably around the, somewhere, I'd say high 8s, low 9s. Again, but depending on what Miller, if he signs, what he signs with. So, it's that couple of years there is going to be quite interesting, and see what happens.
Totally. You know what? When he was for his last contract, I thought at the pace he was going, and I think we talked about this in one of the shows already. I thought he was going to hit 10 million. I thought that he was headed for a $10 million payday, just based on just the ridiculous things he was doing. But then he got cold, and I think this is the part we talked about. It's like, oh, thank goodness he got cold. We could have saved some bucks here, right? Like, because you're buying a little low, right, as opposed to buying high. So, I would you sign them to the same contract? Would you sign one to more than the other personally, if you were the GM?
Like, would I extend his current contract? Is that what you mean?
No. Would you sign if Miller signs at 9.5? If Miller signs at 9.5, do you sign Pettersson at 9.5, or do you go a little higher or a little lower? What would be your preference?
Currently, I'd go lower. I would.
Okay.
I don't. I mean, like I said, he still has to prove that he's better than Miller. And even at his best, he wasn't on track to be beating Miller on the points race. And yes, he's got potential and he's got time, but I don't know. I mean, the nice thing is that we still have time to see what he can do. And, to your point, I'm kind of like, I hope he's mediocre so that we can sign him. And then he does like a Bo Horvat where, you sign him at $5 million and then he turns into an all-star player. Right,
totally.
So,
I mean, we all know what his ceiling is, right? It's huge. Like, the ceiling is massive on him, right? So, but cross your fingers for a bit of a buy low year. Yeah. But I can't remember which team it was.
Sorry, go ahead. Which team?
Oh, I was just saying which team it was where they went for like top player. I think it might have been Jersey or something, like a really hard cap. So it was like top player makes this, and no one goes above that. You assign your 1A star player. Like, I think with Jersey was like probably Niedermeyer or something like that. It's like no one's above that. So you fall into order and you manage your budget that way, right? Because if and it's also good for maybe morale. Like, well, we know because internally there is a budget, right? So you got your 1A forward and your 1A defenseman. Okay, you're now our 1B forward and you're our 2A defenseman, and we can only assign this much percentage to you based on, Brian Burke references for his teams. Like, salary cap goes, what's the difference? I always work with the budget anyways, right? So that's interesting as far as that goes. But I would almost like, well, the max is 9.5. Sorry, you're only getting 9.5 because that's the max. Because then I can manage my budget. Because you're like, well, I need 9.7. Whatever, you got this little wiggle room up and down, and it's the guy's talking in the room, and like if there's egos involved, and so I don't know. It's an interesting theory, but I think overall that you got to assign a percentage, right? Like if the salary cap is this, and hey, if the salary cap goes down, like what do we do here? But anyways, it's you got to work by percentages, not by the dollar amount, because players have always made too much money, right? In I was reading back the old articles of Jeff Courtnall signing for $600,000 as the highest paid player when he necessarily wasn't the biggest star on the team. Linden and whatever. It's like there's always a guy who make too much money. Like Modano, when he signed his contract, it's like, well, how can he make so much? He's not as good as the other top players. Like Modano, he's like top 10, right? So, anyways, the players will always make too much money, and so I think percentage is a better way of tackling it for where your team is, for where the cap is, right? And then dealing with your ELCs, your entry level contracts, and working around that. So anyway, that's just my take on it.
No, I agree. And I got a question for you though. So would you work your percentages bottom up or top down? It's like, are you going to go
top down? Top down, because if you're Taves and Kane, they're 10 mil each. You got to work backwards from there. Right, then you got to deal with Keith. Then you got to deal with Seabrook. Right, there's only so much budget, right? And then whatever the cap is, and then you got to take care of your stars too. At that point too, where and then you have to work backwards from that, right? Do you have a star goalie? Do you have a star D? And it's different for every team, right? Tampa Bay's issues are different than Carolina's issues, right? So where they've got more of a journeyman, young D, and a couple. Anyway, it's different for every team. Like, and Toronto's got issues, and Pittsburgh and Chicago are the ones that have always had to deal with that in the last 8 years, right? LA, Pittsburgh, Chicago. Now Toronto's, they're in cap hell.
Toronto's,
they're in,
and we're close.
Yeah, and so it has to be well managed, right? And make hard decisions, and that's the decisions like, well, Miller, sorry, right? Unfortunately, but so we'll see how that goes. Next headline I've got here is all of Canucks and Canucks related personalities you can book on Cameo, courtesy of Vancouver is Awesome. You can book a personal video from Bruce Boudreau, Kirk McLean, or Mark Messier. So that's kind of cool.
Is it Mark Messier? That's cool.
No, not really. You can book your live video call with him for $2,500 US.
Oh, ouch.
What would you say to Mark Messier in a live video call?
What would I say to Mark Messier in a live video call? Can you throw tomatoes?
Not through the video screen. And speaking of which, your screen is off.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Coming back. There you go.
Yeah.
Problem solved. Didn't cost $2,500 either.
I don't think I'd spend $2,500. Now that I think about it, I don't think I'd spend, even if I had millions of dollars. There's nothing that I need or want to talk to Messier about. I'd rather spend the $250 and take 10 minutes to talk to Bruce Boudreau,
Right.
But and do it 10 times over.
Right.
But yeah, I got nothing to say to Messier.
Here's a question we didn't discuss beforehand. You get to bring 3 hockey players, alive or dead, to dinner. Who do you bring?
Oh man. Gino Ochuk, because he's just has the craziest stories. Pat Quinn.
Oh, okay. Good one.
And just because he was my favorite goalie, Pelle Lindbergh. I would
okay. I
bring
thought
him
you were
along.
going all Canucks on it to support the name of the podcast.
No, yeah.
Canucks only.
I know.
But you didn't. Nice.
I was Canucks the first 2, and then I just had to go. He was my idol growing up as a goalie, and if I had the opportunity to talk to him, I would definitely want to take that. So I was thinking of other Canucks, and there are other Canucks I would have loved to brought on and chatted with. But yeah, no, Pelle Lindbergh.
That's awesome. He was so cool. I loved his mask. I just loved his look as a goalie on the hockey cards.
And he stopped Gretzky on breakaways. So I mean, not a bad goalie.
I didn't see a lot of him play. Even highlight wise, like it was harder. You didn't see all the highlights all the time. So I don't recall him playing a lot other than the odd Hockey Night in Canada, maybe once a year sort of thing. But, back in the day where it was hard to see those broadcasts, but yeah, cool. Good one.
And yourself?
Myself. Well, I think I'd go super obvious with Wayne Gretzky. And then if I'm going to go that route, probably Bobby Orr and Gordie Howe at that point.
Yeah.
Era wise, I mean, and then, I'm not sure how good of a conversationalist Mario Lemieux would be, but he would be super interesting to talk to. I want to hear the stories. I want to hear the good storytellers. I want, so that would be the first thing. And Gretzky's obviously pretty awesome.
Lemieux would have some interesting stories. Just, I mean, even if you stuck to the business side of hockey and not, playing and all of these stories of, the shenanigans that went on playing. But
yeah, totally.
But, how management handled him and how the ownership handled him and how they ended up having to give him basically the team to pay for him. Right. I mean, that's an amazing story.
Yeah. There's so many, there's a bunch of interesting, he was so big, so talented, but then he was in the hack and slash holding era. Right. I mean, how dominant would he have done, in this era with the no clutch, no grab. At that size and strength, 6'4", and could skate well, and his shot was great, and the moves for days, and
I'd be willing to say that McDavid would have a challenger for top player in the league, right?
Easy. Yeah, and I think if I was going Canucks, it would be Linden, McLean. I'd love to say with the Twins too. The Twins would be gracious, but even Bertuzzi and
you can include them as one.
Yeah, there you go. Or Bertuzzi. Anyways, we'll talk about that a different day. That's pretty cool though. Those would be some of my picks. Okay, so the third headline I've got here is from Blake Price when The Price is Right on offside.com. The Canucks and Whitecaps broadcast could be headed in different directions. They're talking about speculation of the Canucks having an in-house radio broadcast. We talked about that last episode about radio, and I was like, yeah, fine, until I was like, wait a second. If it's in-house, it would be in-house controlled. And so there's your closed loop on objective reporting. Let's put it that way.
Yep.
What are your thoughts?
Yep. No, definitely. I think there'd be a little bit too much emphasis. It would be like you might as well have the I don't know what they call them, but basically that cheerleader at the rink that does all the announcements, runs around, gives the prizes and whatnot.
Right.
That sort of quality. Go Canucks, go! You know what? I think that the horrible thing would make me feel like we have transitioned into Toronto media. Where it's just all pumping, Canucks can do no wrong. Yeah. And there'd be no, like you said, no objective. And then who'd they have to fill it? Because the best talent isn't going to sell out, I would think. Ethically, if you will, to just make $1 and work for the Canucks to pump out, the Canucks propaganda, if you will.
Totally.
I think they'd quite easily find other work. And now you're talking about a lack in quality along with being homers. So that would be painful. I think
it could be very painful. That would be a good word for it. Because Homer broadcasts, I mean, the Athletic rated all the hockey broadcasts, and kudos to the Vancouver crew finishing number 2 on that poll. Sportsnet Pacific with Shorty and Garrett and all the talented crew there, and I know they put a lot of hard work into that. But I think it could be very irresponsible media at that point. I mean, you would become very distrustful of it, right? That's just the nature of I mean, that's the whole point of media, right? Is to keep a critical eye on things, and it wouldn't be so.
No, exactly.
Headline number 4 is a personal headlines. I got burned by some fake trade tweets, but I didn't mind the trades. I thought, that's not so bad.
Sources.
Exactly. So I did. I went and I was like, why am I not finding it? I'm like, oh my gosh, it's fake. And so the 2 trades were Höglander to Toronto for Sandin. I thought, if we're obviously still in cap trouble. And if you're gonna, I will hate the day that if we ever trade Höglander, but I haven't watched Sandin a lot, but he's obviously highly regarded. I think he's a left shot D, which we need right shot D. But I thought, okay, if you're gonna make lemonade, that's not some bad lemonade to get there. And then the second one was Dickinson and DiPietro to Montreal for a 3rd round pick. I think there was one more coming back from Montreal, but I was like, oh, okay. I'll have to look it up again. I muted that account. I was like, I don't even want to see any more of this stuff. I think it was from 2 different ones, and one was the fake Dollywall account. But anyways, what do you think of those fake trades?
First off, I can't believe you fell for that one about DiPietro, but
I saw it and I was like, oh man, I'm gonna have to look more, and I did. I was like, oh, wait a second, I feel bad because I really like DiPietro.
So Höglander for Sundin would be an interesting one. It's sort of, I think for both teams, it addresses sort of an area that needs a little bit of improvement, right? So, for the Canucks, having that, and again, like you said, he's not a right shot D man, but having a younger D man, lower cap hit, who's got some talent, who can, develop and get better, and he's NHL ready. He's not like developing in the A, right? Totally. Which is what a lot of defensemen need to, spend time in the A to develop before they're NHL ready. He's ready,
right?
So I think it would sort of fill the needs of both teams, because Toronto's also, they got that cap burden, like you were saying before.
Yeah. And
to get Höglander at, entrance level contract.
I think he's an RFA as well, so I don't know. I'm just double checking that right now. Yeah, he's RFA as of now, I believe. So he needs a contract as well. So.
Oh wow.
So,
okay.
I don't know how he compares. Like I said, I know of him from my long-term hockey pool, and don't have him, so I haven't been that interested in him, and he's never going to be available the way that our pool works. So I haven't had too much interest in following him, but I know he's pretty well regarded. But if he needs a new contract, that doesn't really help. So we need some fixed costs, some cost certainty.
Yeah, exactly. Point. So
okay, what about the Dickinson DiPietro to Montreal for a trade?
That one's interesting because I got no problems. Like first off, Montreal they're gonna need another backup goalie,
right?
And DiPietro is at a point where I think he's not going to get a lot of NHL experience, and that's what he needs.
Yeah.
And he's not going to get it with the Canucks. I think that the Canucks have sort of set themselves up for their 1, 2, and 3 goalies.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's going to see any NHL ice time next year. So
yeah, not with the Canucks.
This would be a great move for him. Dickinson, get him off the books. He's not a loss to our talent pool if we lose him.
Yeah.
And he may be able to help out Montreal. And then what, we get a third? That's a bit
well,
cheap,
you get cap relief, honest, right? You get cap relief out of Dickinson, right? Relief. So $2 million. I think Dickinson's making around $2 So there's a bit of cap straight up.
2.5, isn't he?
No, 2.5, 2.5.
Hold on, I got cap friendly here.
So, but you get cap relief, right? So it costs you a third. With the Carey Price possible news, take a flyer on a goalie that
2.6.
Right. So 2.6. So it's just straight cap relief at that point. And, you're kind of cutting DiPietro a bit of a break, which is too bad because I really like DiPietro. He's been snake bitten horribly in a Canucks uniform. I thought when he was the youngest goalie ever to go to the World Championships as an 18-year-old ever. Yep. In Canada's history. So I was like, all right, this is another great prospect and just hasn't turned out, right? Like you kind of look at him as the next Corey Schneider sort of a deal and just never turned out. But, thankfully we have Demko.
Yeah. I mean, we are good for goalies. I think the right thing to do with DiPietro is not let him sit and rot in the A.
Right.
I think he's got the talent. I think he needs to get the exposure now.
He needs a chance.
Yeah, exactly.
He needs an opportunity.
So
to sink or swim.
I'd rather see him go out and have that opportunity other than just sitting there rotting, right?
Yeah. I'm just on Cap Friendly, and I'm seeing that Phil Kessel is potentially signed with Vegas for $1.5 million.
What?
Yeah, it's right above Paul Stastny signing with Carolina for 1.5. And it says it's unconfirmed, but that's what they've got listed here.
Wow.
So if you go to the homepage of Cap Friendly, anyways, that's news. We didn't have that at all. That's interesting. Kessel's got the Iron Man streak and, a little bit of pride there. So, we were talking, so going back to sort of what deals, in the fake tweet trades that I fell for, I was thinking where, ideally, where does Miller go that makes the most sense? And this doesn't make any sense because the Rangers don't have any cap room, but a Miller plus Myers deal would push the Rangers so close to the edge. I mean, they were close enough to go to the finals as it was. And, that pushed them, but there's no room. You got Zibanejad and Panarin making monster cash there. Fox signing a new deal, monster cash. I mean, they are capped right out. So it doesn't make any sense, but on paper without a salary cap, obviously it makes sense for a lot of teams to get Miller. But it's like, because they've got the young D that we want, right? There's, I don't know much about all of their prospects, but past Fox, they're pretty deep on young D. And so there's in theory room to maneuver with that as far as return for a defenseman, which is what we're kind of looking for, and moving out massive amounts of salary, right? That'd be like $15 million essentially in cap room we create with that move.
Would you do it just for Zachary? Maybe.
Like I said, I don't know enough about them. I haven't watched them enough. I like to watch some games and just get a bit of an eyeball test on players, but especially for my long-term hockey pool, which I won, by the way, this year.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. But anyways, that's, I'm out of I don't have any opinions on them other than the fact that I drafted Fox before and got to watch his meteoric rise in that same pool as well. So back when he was a Calgary draft pick.
Yeah. If you went for Braden Schneider, he's a right-hand D.
Yeah.
His cap hit's pretty low. I think he's 1.2 or somewhere around there.
Right.
And he's got some decent skills.
Yeah.
So would that be something that you like?
One of them, Keandre Miller, Schneider or Jones, one of those three for me. I don't think you get Lindgren. Plus, I think he's making 4. He's also a left defenseman. Yeah, he's their next. So I put one of those 3 guys as a return, maybe, and draft picks. I mean, and they're trying to get rid of Capo as well, right? There's going to be a forward they're trying to get rid of as well. Capo or Lafreniere, which doesn't make any. I mean, he hasn't done very well. But who knows, right? It's still,
I don't know. I mean, well, Capo's at like what 2? I think he's at 1.19 or 2.2 or something around there.
Yeah, but potentially even with Miller's contract, whatever he's got, plus you're freeing up over $10 million, so you can take back some, right? So
So I mean, like, and Capo, I think maybe he's just on the wrong team.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
right.
Maybe
because there was a lot of talk about him when he first came in, and his skill set and whatnot, and I think we saw flashes of it in his rookie season. I think we saw a little bit in his sophomore, but I think it sort of died down, and that might be an organizational issue.
Sure. Yeah, that's
not
a good point.
Capo issue.
That's a good point. Can you imagine playing with Pettersson?
Oh yeah, right.
Like you got a sniper, yeah, exactly.
Right. sorry about my language, but
at 27-minute mark, make sure to beat that one
out. Yeah. So I think I'd be down for that. We get our right-hand defenseman. So let's say it's with
Schneider and Capo.
And Capo.
Yeah. If it's not working there, right? Anyways.
Yeah.
That's just spitball in there. Headline number 5 that I found. This is courtesy of Vancouver Hockey Now. Canucks rebuttal. Could one stat ruin it for Vancouver's 3-star centers? And this was an interesting article because I think the headline was well written and I clicked on it. Not necessarily clickbait, but it outlines when the Canucks beat the Canadiens and then the Leafs and the Islanders and how they lined up Miller, Pettersson, and Horvat as their 1, 2, 3 centers. But the crunch of this article was that, at some point you're going to run out of ice time. What's your thoughts on that? That's a great threesome for centers, like as your 1, 2, 3 centers, like unbelievable. And we've talked about that before. Horvat on your third line, decimating another third line center is a key to success for this team.
Yeah, I think that if finding ice time for your 3 lines is your problem, that's an amazing problem to have.
100%. 100%.
It's like who, because now we're talking about guys who can, you have that. You look back at the 2011 team, right? And, if the Sedins weren't carrying a game, then Kessler and his line were carrying a game, or remind me on the third. I keep doing this, and you keep reminding me. Third line was
Malhotra, Torres, and Hansen.
That's right, Hansen. That's the one I was thinking of. And and look at the similarities between what we have now and what they had back then. Right, third line, strong guys. Awesome on the dot, right? Leaders in the room, right? Second line, high risk, high reward, right? And that's what Miller is. Miller is, what you're getting. People are like, oh, he doesn't back check. Oh, he makes bad plays. He's high risk. He makes, he goes for those high risk.
He's a torpedo.
Opportunities.
He's
exactly.
Torpedo. Yeah.
Right. And what was Kessler? Kessler was high risk, high reward. He was
torpedo.
He was bang him up. Yeah. Right. Like he was a nuclear torpedo, but he was high risk, high reward. And then the Sedin's line was just skill, finesse. And that's what I can see with Pettersson and so depending on who they put him with and whatnot. So there's a lot of similarities between them. And I think that figuring out who gets what ice time is your biggest problem. That's the best problem to have because I'm like, if someone's going, and I think you were saying this before, right? If Horvat's going, if his line's going, give him the ice.
Right.
And you can trim back the other guys. Or another point that you brought up was, I'll let you take it on a bit more because you made some great points about it. With the resting of the players, right?
Right.
And you were saying something about. I'm going to let you explain it better because you brought that up, and I thought it was a great idea, a great thought.
If you're into your ice management time, time management for the players, it didn't occur to me that I was thinking about the article. I was like, wait a second, because the same thought you had about like, well, that's a great problem to have. Like, well, what a luxury. You got three guys you can roll in, but if you strategically as a coach say, okay, Miller, it's your heavy night. You're going to hit 23 minutes this mark, but your other two are going to hit 18 and 16 minutes. So you can rest and save the wear and tear on the body. But then you rotate next game. Okay, Pettersson, it's your heavy night. You're going to go 24 minutes and they know they're going to play more. And but unless someone gets really hot or someone gets, or gets really cold, then you adjust. But it's kind of the same theory as playing your backup every 8 games. Right? You got to give your guy a rest, right? So if you do it in a way, what a luxury when you've got 3 guys you roll out and then you save the wear and tear in the body. And then every 6th, 8th game, he's like, okay, Lazar, it's your heavy night. You're going 24 minutes and you go, right? And you tweak it on power play time. You load up power plays, you load up things. You give teams looks that they've never seen before, right? You can't plan around that, right? It's like, in soccer, I didn't really realize in soccer that if you play a system, it changes about 8 times in a game. They will change their formation 8 times on average at the highest level. Like, oh, wow. It's not playing a left wing lock or whatever it would be in hockey, but you're changing it. And that's hard to coach against. It's like, okay, what formation is it? And they're scrambling, right? And then especially when, where you're yelling from the sidelines, it's not like hockey where you can come to the bench and say, okay, guys, they're playing this. Adjust, right? Anyways. But yeah, I think that occurred to me from that article. So I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah. Interesting take on that for sure.
Oh, definitely. I would love to see, Bruce do something like that, right? Because that, like you said, that's never been done before. And I think it's an amazing idea. And at least I'd love to see someone try it. I don't care what team.
Especially on the West Coast teams where you've got heavy travel and the wear and tear for the travel is way harder for Vancouver, Calgary, Seattle now, LA, and then probably San Jose. I think it's just harder to get in and out of San Francisco there. But anyways, it's an interesting concept. I've never heard it discussed. You hear about like game management and time, all these sort of things. And it's just like, maybe it's just the next level thing. I mean, who knows? Like, it's just an idea. Yeah, totally. Yeah. So that was a good conversation for the in-depth or the headlines. Let's talk a little more in depth about this one. And this is something we can kind of chew on a little bit, is that the Canucks are ranked number 14 in the NHL pipeline for rankings for prospects. What's your thoughts on that when you first see that headline?
I think that that could be fair, but it's also, I mean, it's this past draft was not full of obvious talent, and I don't think, I mean, one of the best players that was expected to go first went 4th in the draft,
right?
And I think there was a lot of people were just kind of like, well, we're going to pick who. I don't think it was we're picking the best player. Mm-hmm. I think for every team, I think it was we're picking what we need to fill, and that just sort of tells you where the actual talent pool was for the draft.
Oh, interesting.
Because teams were just grabbing for position. Okay, we need to develop more, defensemen. We need to develop that position, and they're just filling the needs, and not having to go, okay, what's the next best player, right?
Yeah.
So were we 14th? Yeah, I mean, maybe, but I'm not. I like our pick or our picks. I'm not overly concerned with who they grabbed. I don't think they, could have done much better.
Well, he did well in the juniors, so I think that's encouraging. I think they're talking about the overall farm system or the system of prospects and overall. So, I mean, so I've just Googled, and this is coming up on Dauber's prospects about the prospects there. So they've got Kuzmenko as a prospect. Then this is the left wing, Aiden McDonough. But, I'm just kind of looking at the ones that catch my eye that have hit the news. So the next one would be Linus Karlsson. And then past Lekkerimaki would be Danila Klimovich. And then William Lockwood, who we've seen up, which looks like a nice replacement for Tyler Mott. And then going to defense, Jack Rathbone. And then the new Elias Pettersson. Apparently he pronounces his name differently or the same. I've read two different reports. But then this is where I was like trying to check for the accuracy because they got Kuzmenko there, but they've also got like Noah Juleson as a prospect still, and then Brady Keeper, who we talked about. We have no idea about Jet Wu. So, anyways, if you look at that, and then Silovs, the goalie, Artur's. I don't know how to say his name for crying out loud. I think it's probably the first time I've said it out loud. Past DiPietro. So this list looks pretty up to date. And then Ty Young's on there as well. Yeah. So I think they're all unproven. There's no one on there's like, they feel like a surefire prospect. And that's kind of probably why we're ranked 14th because no one's busted 14. Through. Yeah. So, the proof's in the pudding. Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't, right? So.
I think this is more reflective on the previous regime than it is, obviously, than it is now, right? Because
which is also good and bad.
3 players.
Because here's the other problem is that all their best picks are playing on the big team, right? So that's a good and bad problem that they've emptied the cabinet, but they haven't refilled it at the same rate that they got, from Besser to Pettersson to Hughes. Podkolson, right? So, and Demko, right? So, that's a good and bad thing. So, you can't have an endless stream of rookies coming in because there's not always a place for it. I mean, in salary cap world, you need that. Because I remember back when I think it was Bure's second year or something like that, and it was like the roster was set. Like, the team that I think it was 93, and it was just before they went to the finals. There was one rookie on that team. And sometimes there's just no room for rookies, right? Because everyone's playing at where they're supposed to be. Like the 2011 team, like who was the rookies there? I think Tanev might have been the only rookie right and around that mark. There was no one else in the forwards that was a rookie.
You're right. No one else was. Yeah.
And he wasn't a full-time player yet. That was after that. So, anyways, so I have thoughts and feelings, just the same what you mentioned about the Benning bracket regime versus the new regime. We don't know what their track record is because they've drafted one player. They haven't made any trades per se, necessarily nothing significant. So the jury's out on it. So I think it's fair. But if you're to rank the success rate of the last, how far are you back? You want to go? We'll go 8 years. Do you want to go Benning's entire run? Again, I said it in a previous recording that we've done. I think Benning was one pick away from being fired and one pick away from the Ring of Honor. I mean, it was so contentious, contemptuous. That's not even the right word. But it was so divisive as far as like, you just brought 5 amazing prospects to the NHL with your draft picks. I don't think there's many other teams currently that could say that they've got the last 5 or 6 out of the 5 or 7 years, 5 first rounders or second rounders playing, even Hoglander, right? So Hoglander would be the 6th, right? So, a few misses with the, Virtanen seems to be, Virtanen for sure. Who's the one that went to Seattle to the Kraken? I can't remember his name.
Levy.
No, it was a forward. It was Cole Lind.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I remember the draft video behind the scenes, like, why is no one taking Cole Lind? And they're like, oh, cool, awesome. And I saw him play preseason. They're like, yeah, he looks good and whatever. But anyways, that's six picks that are playing on the current roster. I mean, that's over a third of your team, essentially, right? Almost a third of your team. So, anyways, no new, surefire, but you've got 5-6 players playing the NHL from your draft picks. So not terrible. Yeah, that's for sure.
No. And like you said, had they had they made, one change to the picks, could we be talking about, how much more dynamic the team would be, right? So, but yeah, you know what? I'm happy with where we're at right now, and hopefully we get a bit more here.
Well, it's the nice mix, and obviously in this cap window, and I alluded to something I'd written before you and I had even met about an article about the cap windows, and that Podkolzin was so key this past season to taking the next step, but he was just steady, even, average. He wasn't dominating and he wasn't sucking too bad. So, Pettersson steps in and dominated, right? Like Quinn Hughes steps in and he dominated, right? They're like, oh my goodness, if Podkolzin somehow did that, that's the next step. That was the next evolution, but it wasn't. And so, then Miller stepped up. But when you have all your guns firing at the same time and you're cap compliant, that's when you're in the conversation, right? Because you can get hot and you get a hot goalie, and then up against the powerhouses, like when you're up against Colorado, because that's the gold standard, Vegas and Colorado. I mean, Vegas had a crap year, obviously. But Colorado, got to get through Edmonton. You got to get through Colorado. You got to get through Vegas, all the tough teams, right? And LA, like the resurgence they had. Like, so anyways, that, everyone has to be firing, and they weren't. And so, we are where we are.
Well, I mean, you sent me that article that NHL Fantasy put out about Podkolzin and how they think he's going to be the number one winger on the Canucks. So I mean, and if they're ranking him up there, an interesting thing that I learned from that article is that they actually put Pettersson as a center left winger for the fantasy. So if you're in your fantasy and you need to pick him for, you want to pick him for a left winger instead of center,
there you go.
You can do that. So
that's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool.
But yeah, no, he's got the eye, if you will, of the NHL, right? Saying that he's going to be, he has that potential. So it's going to be interesting to see how he does this year. I think everyone's going to be working a lot harder because they want to come out, and I honestly think that the players are going to want to come out and impress Bruce. And impress this new management team, right? Because this was a mid-year switch. They came in, they're all like, yeah, this is what we're doing. I think everyone's going to be coming out and going, look what I can do. Like this is, I think, honestly, I think this is a show me year for everyone, because none of these guys are this management team's players. Yeah, so basically, they can just look and go, everyone's on the block if need be, because
great point.
You're not my players.
Right. Yeah, good job. That's actually a good point. Just go back to Podkolzin too, because don't forget that he was ranked third overall in that draft, and he went 10th, whatever he went. He dropped like a rock too, right? So he had the potential. The scouts were projecting him much higher, so he should be in those conversations. I mean, it's just a matter of time if he shows up at some point with those abilities matching what his projection was. So, yeah,
it's going to be exciting to see, man. I'm very excited. I can't wait for hockey season to start. Let's go already.
Well, the countdown's on. A month to go to training camp, so here we go.
Yeah.